Since childhood, you've felt it. That strange sensation that something just isn't quite right. Not with you, but with the world around you. It's as if you're an actor who's forgotten their lines in a play. A play that everyone else seems to know by heart. You watched the other kids play and wondered why they seemed so naturally happy in their games, why their laughter came so easily, while yours felt somehow forced. Eckhart Tolle, the spiritual teacher, once said something that changed my understanding of this experience. He said that those who feel like strangers in this world are not sick. They are simply awake, in a world of sleepers. But let me ask you a question before we go any further. Have you ever had this thought in the middle of the night, that you were born into the wrong family, in the wrong era, in the wrong place? If your answer is yes, then what I'm about to reveal to you today will change your understanding of your own existence. There is a deep spiritual reason why you feel this isolation. And it's not what you think. Psychologists call it existential dysphoria. They'll give you medications to make it disappear. They'll tell you it's a problem to be solved, a manufacturing defect in your brain. But Eckhart Tolle offers a radically different perspective. He says that this feeling of not belonging is the first whisper of your soul, trying to wake you up. Think about it for a moment. A fish never wonders why it's in the water. It doesn't feel like it's in the wrong place because it's exactly where it needs to be, completely identified with its environment. But you've always felt like a fish, looking at the water and wondering what you're doing there. And that very question, that ability to even ask yourself that question, as proof that you are not completely identified with this world, here's what no one has told you. This feeling of alienation that you carry like a secret wound is actually your greatest gift. It's the crack through which the light of consciousness can enter. Society wants you to fit in. It wants you to play the game, to pursue the same goals as everyone else. The house, the car, the status, the recognition. But something within you has always known that these things are empty, that the race that everyone else seems engaged in is a race to nowhere. Eckhart Tolle explains that the collective ego of humanity creates a shared reality, a kind of collective dream that most people mistake for absolute reality. But some souls arrive on this earth with a weaker connection to this collective dream. They see through the veil from the start, and that's why they feel like strangers. Let me tell you the story of Emily. She was 42 years old when she came to see me. She was crying, telling me that she'd spent her whole life trying to fit in, trying to pretend to be normal. She had a family, a respectable job, a house in a good neighborhood. But every morning, she woke up with this unexplainable emptiness, this sensation that her real life was somewhere else, that the person she was playing wasn't really her. I had her listen to Tolle's teachings on the feeling of not belonging, and something changed in her eyes. She understood that she wasn't the problem. It was the world that was asleep, and she was simply starting to wake up. Here's the first truth that Tolle teaches us on this subject. The feeling of not belonging is not a symptom of depression. It's a symptom of awakening. It's your consciousness beginning to disidentify from the world of forms. When you were a child, you may have tried to talk about these feelings to adults. You may have told them that something seemed wrong, that the world didn't seem real. And what did they do? They told you it was your imagination, that you needed to grow up, that you needed to be more realistic. But what they called realism was only their own sleep, their own complete identification with the collective dream. Eckhart Tolle reminds us that the great mystics of all traditions have spoken of this feeling, the feeling of being a stranger in a strange land, of only being passing through this world. In the Christian tradition, they speak of being in the world but not of the world. In Buddhism, they speak of the illusion of Maya, this apparent reality that hides a deeper truth. You are not crazy. You are not flawed. You are simply perceiving something, that the majority cannot yet see. But here's where it gets really interesting, and really uncomfortable too. This feeling of not belonging can become a spiritual trap. If you don't understand its true nature, some people use this feeling to feel superior to others. They think, I'm different because I'm better, I'm special, I'm more evolved. And that's exactly where the ego creeps in and corrupts the spiritual experience. Tolle is very clear on this point. The feeling of not belonging should never become a new identity, a new story that the ego tells about itself, because as soon as you say, I am an awakened soul who doesn't belong to this world of sleepers, you've created a new separation, a new prison for your consciousness. The truth is more subtle and more profound. You don't feel like you belong to this world because you're starting to perceive that you are not of this world, but no one truly is of this world. The difference is that you know it. The others have forgotten. That means that your job is not to flee this world, nor to despise it, nor to feel superior to those who are still asleep. Your job is to become a bridge, an awake presence in the middle of the dream. Let me give you an image. Imagine you're in a movie theater. Everyone around you is completely absorbed by the film. They laugh, they cry, they're afraid. They're completely identified with what's happening on the screen. But you've had a moment of lucidity. You've remembered that you're in a movie theater, that it's just a film, that you are not one of the characters. Does that mean you have to leave the theater in disgust? No. Does that mean you have to despise those who are still absorbed? No. It simply means that you can now watch the film with a different perspective. You can appreciate it for what it is, an experience, a game, without being completely lost in it. This is what Eckhart Tolle calls living in the world, but not of it. The second truth is this: that feeling of not belonging is often accompanied by a deep empathy. And it's this very empathy that makes you suffer so much. You feel the pain of the world in a way that others simply don't. You see the unnecessary suffering, the absurd power games, the frantic race towards empty goals, and that hurts you, not because you're weak, but because you're open, because your ego defenses aren't as solid as those of others. Many people who feel like strangers in this world become healers, artists, teachers, therapists, because they have a natural ability to perceive what's really going on with other people. But this ability comes at a price, the price of profound loneliness. How can you truly connect with someone who's asleep when you're awake? How can you have an authentic conversation when the other person is only speaking from their ego? Eckhart Tolle teaches us that this loneliness is temporary. It's a necessary phase in the awakening process. At first you feel separate, alone in your perception, misunderstood by everyone. But as you deepen your presence, you begin to perceive something extraordinary. You begin to see the awakened consciousness in others too. Even if they don't know it yet, you start to connect, not at the level of the ego anymore, but at the level of being. And that's where true intimacy becomes possible. An intimacy that doesn't depend on sharing the same opinions or the same tastes. An intimacy that exists in the silence, in the shared presence. The third truth is perhaps the most difficult to accept. The world to which you feel you don't belong doesn't really exist, not in the way you think it does. Eckhart Tolle explains that what we call the world is just a collective mental construct, a shared interpretation of reality, not reality itself. You don't feel like you belong to the world because you're starting to perceive that this world isn't solid, that it's made of thoughts, of beliefs, of stories, and something within you remembers a deeper reality, a reality that exists before words, before concepts, before the boundaries that the mind creates. This reality is what Eckhart Tolle calls presence, being, pure consciousness, and that's where you truly belong, not to a geographical location, not to a family, not to a culture, but to being itself. When you really understand this, something magical happens. The feeling of not belonging doesn't disappear completely, but it transforms. It becomes a door rather than a prison. You stop looking for a place where you'll belong. You stop looking for people who will understand you. You stop looking for the life you were supposed to have, because you realize that the belonging you were seeking was never in the external world. It was in your own depth. You belong to life itself, to the consciousness that animates all things, and that belonging can never be lost. It can only be forgotten. And now, you remember. Let me share with you what I've observed in those who have gone through this transformation. They don't suddenly become socially adept. They don't suddenly start to love small talk and mass entertainment. But they stop suffering from their difference. They accept it as a natural part of their path. They understand that their role isn't to become like everyone else, but to be a point of light in the collective dream. Some of the greatest spiritual teachers have spoken about this experience. The Buddha himself was a prince who didn't feel like he belonged in his palace. Jesus spoke of his kingdom, which was not of this world. It's not a coincidence that so many spiritual seekers began their journey with this feeling of alienation. Here's what Eckhart Tolle suggests you do with this feeling. Firstly, stop trying to make it disappear. Stop treating it like a problem. Welcome it as a messenger. This feeling is telling you something important. It's telling you that you're ready for something greater than what this world can offer. Secondly, use this feeling as a doorway to presence. Every time you feel that isolation, that alienation, turn your attention inward. Ask yourself, who is the one who feels like they don't belong? Who is the one who is observing this feeling? This question brings you back to your true nature, to the consciousness that observes all feelings, all thoughts, all experiences. This consciousness doesn't belong to any world because it is the source of all worlds. Thirdly, find other awakened people. Not to form an exclusive club, not to feel superior to the sleepers, but to remind each other of your true nature. There's a reason why spiritual traditions have always emphasized community. Sangha in Buddhism, ecclesia in Christianity. When two awakened people meet, something powerful happens. A field of presence intensifies. The remembrance of who we really are becomes clearer. Fourthly, transform your feeling of alienation into compassion. Instead of judging those who are still asleep, remember that you too were once asleep, and remember that their suffering comes from the same place as yours once did, from complete identification with the world of forms, from forgetting their true nature. This compassion doesn't mean you have to sacrifice yourself for others. It simply means that you see them with different eyes, eyes that recognize their essence, beyond their persona. Fifthly, and this is perhaps the most important, stop looking for an explanation for your feeling of not belonging. In the external world, stop telling yourself that you don't feel like you belong because of your difficult childhood, because of your traumas, because of society. All these explanations may contain a part of truth, but they keep you in the role of the victim. They keep you on the surface. The profound truth is that you don't feel like you belong, because something within you remembers where you truly come from. And it's not about a place, it's about a state, the state of pure consciousness, which is your true home. Now, I'm going to reveal something that few teachers dare to say. That feeling of not belonging never completely disappears, even after awakening, but its quality changes radically. Before awakening, it's a wound, a source of suffering, a reason to feel flawed. After awakening, it's a freedom, a lightness, an ability to be in the world without being imprisoned by the world. Zen masters talk about living like a lotus in the water. The lotus grows in muddy water, but its petals remain perfectly clean. The water doesn't penetrate them. Similarly, you can live in this world, participate in its activities, have relationships, a job, projects, but never forgetting that you are not that you are the consciousness in which all of that appears. This isn't an escape from reality. It's actually the only way to be truly present to reality, because you are no longer filtered by layers of egotistical identification. Now let me address an aspect that's rarely talked about. That feeling of not belonging can become a subtle addiction. Some people become so attached to their identity as a solitary soul that they unconsciously sabotage any possibility of authentic connection. They say they want to belong, but their actions constantly create separation. They test others, they shut down. They run away as soon as intimacy becomes possible, because deep down, they're afraid. Afraid to discover that their special feeling of alienation was just another form of ego, another story that the mind was telling. Eckhart Tolle invites us to honestly examine this possibility. Is your feeling of not belonging an authentic perception, or has it become a comfortable prison, an excuse not to engage fully in life? The answer to this question can only come from your own sincere observation. If you find that you're using your spirituality to justify your avoidance of life, then something needs to change. True awakening doesn't remove you from life. It plunges you deeper into life, but with a different quality. A presence, an openness, an ability to be touched without being wounded. Now, I'm going to talk to you about sacred solitude. There's a difference between the solitude that comes from the ego and the solitude that comes from awakening. The solitude of the ego is painful. It cries out, I want to be understood. I want to be accepted. I want to belong. The solitude of awakening is peaceful. It whispers, I am complete in myself. I am the source of my own love, and I am home in myself. The first one drives you to desperately seek connections. The second one allows you to create connections from a place of abundance, rather than lack. When you stop seeking belonging outside, something paradoxical happens. Authentic connections start to appear naturally. Because you're no longer emitting the desperate signal of neediness, you're emitting the calm signal of presence. And it's this signal that attracts other awakened souls to you. Tolle recounts how after his awakening, he spent 2 years on public benches, simply sitting, simply present. People would come sit next to him and talk to him about their deepest problems, without him having asked for anything. That's the power of presence. It creates a field in which truth can emerge, in which masks can fall. You don't need to search for your tribe. If you cultivate presence, your tribe will find you. Now let me address the practical question that many people ask. How can I function in this world when I feel so different? Tolle offers a simple but profound answer. Do what you have to do, with all your attention. But don't identify with what you do. You can go to work without becoming your work. You can have conversations without becoming your opinions. You can play your role in the world, without forgetting that it's just a role. This ability to play without being taken by the game is what allows awakened souls to function in the world without being destroyed by it. There's a lightness that comes with this understanding, a sense of cosmic humor. You can laugh at the absurdity of the human situation because you're no longer completely caught up in it. This isn't cynicism. Cynicism comes from a wounded heart that has closed. It's rather a quiet joy that comes from an open heart that sees reality as it is. Here's a practice that Tolle recommends for those who feel like strangers in the world. Every morning, before you start your day, take a few minutes to sit in silence. Close your eyes and feel the sensation of being alive. Not your thoughts, not your emotions, but the simple sensation of existence that is always there beneath everything else. Then tell yourself, I am not my thoughts. I am not my emotions. I am not my story. I am the consciousness in which all of that appears. This practice anchors you in your true nature, not before you enter into the dream of the world. And when, during the day, you feel that familiar feeling of not belonging, use it as a reminder. Instead of getting lost in the pain of isolation, turn your attention inward. Return to that sensation of being, to that presence that is always there, little by little. You'll discover that this presence is your true home, and that you belong there totally, unconditionally. effortlessly. The world will continue to be what it is. People will continue to sleep, to fight for unimportant things, to suffer from their identification with the mind. But you will have found something that the world can neither give nor take, a belonging that transcends all worlds. And it is from there that you can truly be helpful to others, not by changing them, not by explaining to them that they're asleep, but simply by being that awakened presence that silently reminds them of their own depth. Here's what I've learned after years of studying the teachings of Tolle. That feeling of not belonging is a necessary passage for every evolving soul. It's a sign that you're moving beyond identification with a limited reality. To open yourself to something vast. But this passage can become a dead end if you settle there, if you make it your identity, if you use it to separate yourself rather than to connect at a deeper level. The key is to move through this feeling rather than running from it or clinging to it. On the other side of this feeling, there's something magnificent, a universal belonging that includes everything and excludes nothing. A consciousness that is at home everywhere because it is the source of everything. That's your true nature. It's what you've always been, even when you had forgotten. And the fact that you're watching this video right now, the fact that these words resonate within you, that's a sign that you're beginning to remember. Don't let anyone convince you that your feeling of not belonging is a flaw. It's a doorway to a freedom that most people can't even imagine. The freedom to be in this world, but not of this world. The freedom to play the game without being trapped by the game. The freedom to love without dependence, to give without expectation, to be fully present without being completely identified. This is what Eckhart Tolle calls awakening. And it's what your feeling of not belonging has been guiding you towards. From the beginning, trust this guide, even when it's painful. Even when it seems to isolate you from everyone, because it's taking you somewhere, where you'll never be alone again. Not because you'll be surrounded by people, but because you'll be one with all that is, and that is the ultimate belonging, the one your soul has always been seeking. I want to share with you now the 5 signs that indicate your feeling of not belonging is a sign of awakening and not a psychological problem. The first sign is that you've always had deep questions about the meaning of life. Not intellectual questions, questions that came from the deepest part of your being. You looked at the world around you, and you wondered why everyone seemed to accept things that seemed absurd to you. The second sign is that you have an extreme sensitivity to hypocrisy. You can't stand pretense. Social masks exhaust you. You thirst for authenticity in a world that seems built on appearances. The third sign is that you've often had moments of expanded perception, moments when the world seemed to shine with a different light, where you perceived a beauty and a depth that others didn't seem to see. The fourth sign is that you're naturally drawn to spiritual teachings and not to escape reality, but because something in you recognizes the truth when you hear it. The fifth sign is that despite your feeling of isolation, you have a natural capacity to see the suffering of others, to perceive what's hidden behind their masks. If you recognize 3 of these 5 signs in yourself, then your feeling of not belonging is probably a sign of spiritual awakening. And now, I want to leave you with one last teaching from Eckhart Tolle. He says that the feeling of not belonging in this world is actually the doorway unto a greater belonging, a belonging to life itself. You didn't come here to become like everyone else. You came here to remember who you truly are, and to help others, and to remember too. Your feeling of being an outsider isn't a burden. It's a blessing in disguise. Accept it, honor it, and let it guide you toward your true home. A home that isn't a place, but a state of being, pure presence, awakened consciousness, unconditional love. That's where you've always belonged. And that's where you're returning, not after death, Marcius, but now, in this very instant. You simply need to remember. If this video touched you, share it with someone who also feels like a stranger in this world. Together, we can remind each other of our true nature. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more teachings on spiritual awakening. Next time, I'll talk to you about another aspect of the experience of awakened souls, something that very few dare to admit. Until then, stay present, stay awake, and remember, you are exactly where you need to be.